So when you start to think about vintage snare drums, especially wood species snare drums, you're usually going for a mahogany, sometimes maple, but mainly that 3-ply mahogany, poplar mahogany sound. Well, Ludwig made a drum that was 8 lugs, 3-ply mahogany. It was also 6.5 inches deep. And in this Snare Saturday video, you're gonna get the chance to hear it for yourself. Yo, what's going on everybody? Nick Costa here, and in this video, I'm gonna be showing you a early 60s Ludwig Auditorium snare drum. This was a 3-ply mahogany snare drum that was offered by Ludwig so you could get a premium sound at a more affordable price. Now, before we dive into this video, make sure you hit the subscribe button as well as the bell notification. That way you're notified of any additional content that I upload to the channel. So the Ludwig Auditorium series, this was something that was offered in the 60s. And what Ludwig did is they took their 3-ply mahogany snare drum, and just like everything else Ludwig does, they thought about finding a way to make a more affordable option. So what they did, like I said, they took that 3-ply mahogany shell, they put 8 double-sided bow tie lugs, triple flange hoops on the top and the bottom. And if you got a drum from, let's say 1963, like most likely this drum is, then it was equipped with a Ludwig P83 throw-off. Finally, it came with a baseball bat internal muffler. That way you had a way to dampen the drum if you needed to. With those vintage 3-ply drums from the 60s per se, you had the Jazz Festival and you had a Pioneer. Well, maybe you didn't want a drum that was 5x14. That's where the Ludwig Auditorium comes into play because it is 6.5x14. It's a little bit deeper. Ludwig also released a 6.5x15 model of the Auditorium snare drum, so there were 2 different options. Now I have to be honest with all of you. The way that this drum looked in the trailer or in the thumbnail of this video was not the condition this drum was in when I received it. But rather than doing a full restoration video where you're watching me clean a drum for a pretty long period of time, I decided to try something a little bit different with this video to maybe expedite the process a bit so we can get to the playing a little bit faster. So let's go ahead and make our way over to the bench and let's get started. All right, so let's go ahead and do something a little bit different with this video. Let's take a look at the drum on the bench already. So looking around, this drum for its age isn't in that bad a shape. You can see butt plate is intact. It is holding the snare wires and it is missing the internal dampener. However, I do have one from that 60s era, the baseball bat style. You could see how much bigger that is compared to the old round turn knob puck muffler. So that'll fit right in there, no problem. There's the bottom mounting screw like we have there. So we can replace that. That isn't an issue. Looking at the throw-off is intact. It is functional, even though it is locking up a little bit. So that might be something that we want to address. Take a look at it once we take everything apart, see what's going on with that. But step number 1, as you are all aware if you've watched other restoration videos, is to get this thing taken completely apart. So let's go ahead and do that in 3, 2, 1. All right, so now that the drum is apart, let's talk about the specs of this drum. It is a 6.5x14 shell. That is depth by diameter. There are 8 double-sided bow tie lugs, triple flange hoops for the top and the bottom, like you can see right here. What is now taken apart, Ludwig's P83 throw-off and the standard Ludwig butt plate. And finally, a set of Ludwig snare wires. These are 12 strands and they are all connected. They're a little warped, obviously, because of the age of the drum, and that is pretty common. So, a couple things to identify. Number 1, the badge. Looking at it, it's a Ludwig badge. It has no serial number on the top. It says Ludwig Drum Company and Chicago, USA. So, identifying this drum most likely is from 1960 through 1963, potentially early 1964. Now, I do believe that this is a drum from 1963 because of the fact that it has 8 double-sided lugs and not 6, and because it's a 6.5x14. That means that this is a Ludwig Auditorium snare drum. To confirm that, we have the P83 throw-off, which again is taken apart right here. Whereas with the earlier Auditorium models from, say, 60, 61, 62, potentially, they did not have that P83 throw-off. They had a completely different throw-off on the drum. Also, that does confirm that this is in fact a baseball bat internal dampener on the drum, because these are the ones that were being used in the early 60s. So identifying this as a early 60s Ludwig Auditorium snare drum, that means that this shell is a mahogany shell, and it is 3-ply. So it is mahogany, poplar, and mahogany, and it has maple reinforcement rings on the top and the bottom, because even though they are considered 3-ply mahogany, those mahogany inside and outside plies are extremely thin. The majority of the shell is poplar. Poplar is not that dense of a wood, which is why you have to use maple reinforcement rings to make sure that the drum can stay in round. Now, looking at the inside of the shell, I did not see any date stamp. As a matter of fact, there isn't a date stamp on here. The only thing that's on the inside of the shell, it looks like 2 initials, maybe an AK, AR, something of that nature, which could just be an inspection thing, not too sure. You can also see the inside of the shell has what Ludwig was calling the reso coat, although with this drum in particular, it looks like maybe coffee or soda or something was spilled on the drum, because there's a couple spots on the inside up there. Now with the Ludwig Auditorium, quick fun fact for you is that they were available in either a pearl, lacquer, or mahogany finish. So it is safe to say that when the Jenkintown Music Department purchased this drum in the early 60s, Ludwig painted the drums to be the school colors, which is this unique Duco finish where it looks like it is a natural mahogany on the top and the bottom, but it has that black in the middle. So first thing I got to do, as you are all aware, is just clean the shell up a little bit, just water in some Blue Dawn to get all of the contaminants off of it. And while I'm doing that, I will soak the hardware and then polish it with Never Dull by Eagle One, and I'll be right back.
Approximately 10 hours later.
All right, so hardware is done, shell is done. I even did the badge. The badge, however, I did use Brasso because works wonders, as you can tell. That looks so much better than it did before. So now that this is all done, let's go ahead and get this drum back together, and let's go ahead and do it with the magic of a snap. So in 3, 2, 1. And it's together, ready to go. Here's the fun fact. It is not a 14-inch drum. It is a 15-inch drum. I had heads I was trying to put on the drum, which of course were 14s, and they were not the right size. So luckily I had a set of 15-inch heads because of that giant field snare drum that I have, the WFL one that was in an earlier Snare Saturday video. So I was able to put those on. And I had a set of 15-inch snare wires, which of course, the wires that were put on the drum were 14-inch. They are slightly shorter, not by much, but enough that I was concerned about it. So I'd rather have a set of 15s. That way you have a wider spread of those. Baseball bat internal muffler has been installed, so that works just fine too. Now, since this is a 15-inch drum, that does confirm this is a Ludwig Auditorium. They were offered as both a 6.5 by 14, that was model number 470, and a 6.5 by 15, which was model 471. That is what this drum is right here. So now that this drum is ready to go, let's go ahead and get it on the kit and play it through a few different tunings. So the first thing I want to talk about now that you've heard this drum is how I tuned it. Just like every other video in the Snare Saturday series or every snare drum that I tune, I like to tune my bottom head to be tabletop tight. I like it to have a tight tension so that way I can get a quick, snappy response out of the snare wires. As you can hear with this drum, because it is a little bit out of round, there is some sympathetic buzz with those snare wires. If the head was looser, you would get more buzz out of those snare wires. Now, as far as the top head is concerned, I make sure that every lug is finger tight. Then from there, I did a full turn on each lug, and then I found one of the lugs that was considered my point of reference or my tuning point, and I made all of the other lugs match that pitch. Once I got there, that's where the low tuning came in. From there, I only did a quarter turn on each tension rod to go from one tuning to the next. Then once I did that, once again, I would use one of those tension points as my reference and tune the rest of the lugs to that one. Also, just like the WFL field drum that I showed in a way earlier Snare Saturday video, it's safe to say that those 3-ply mahogany drums from maybe say the 50s or the early 60s, they can start to sound like they have some metal overtones, which is pretty crazy. Now maybe they didn't sound that way when they were first built, but if you find a drum from that era, there's a pretty high probability that it's going to have some pretty bright ringing overtones. Now, this drum is model 471, so it is a 6.5 by 15. So you have a 15-inch diameter drum and you only have 8 lugs. So that means that the drum is going to breathe a little bit more than modern day snare drums, which have 10 lugs and are a little bit more direct. Also, we're talking about a 3-ply mahogany shell, which is mahogany, poplar, mahogany, with maple reinforcement rings, so the shell isn't that thick to begin with. So again, it's going to breathe and have a lot of life and air to it. But either way, I would love to get your feedback and what you thought of this drum, so make sure that you leave it in the comment section below, letting me know. Now, if you are interested in getting a Ludwig Auditorium snare drum for yourself, you could search any gear website and find them. And you are going to find both the 6.5 by 14 and the 6.5 by 15 model. Now, the one thing I do have to say is that as far as price is concerned, they are varying. Sometimes you can find them for around $200, $250, and sometimes you are finding them for $600 to $800. So just like everything, if you are set on getting one, keep your ear to the ground, keep your eye on those pages, and most likely you will find one come up at the price point that you're willing to spend. Unless, of course, you are looking to buy the drum for $100 or less, and let's be realistic, if you found a drum in that condition, you're probably not going to be able to play it. Now, if you have any other additional questions in regards to how I tune the drum, maybe the gear that I am playing in the video, or anything else, feel free to leave it in the comment section and I will try my best to answer it. Now, if you enjoyed this video and you want to see some of the earlier videos from the Snare Saturday series, I put a link to the playlist in the description below, and I'll also have it pop up right here to make it a bit easier for you. Finally, if you enjoyed this video, please make sure that you give it a thumbs up. That way it makes it a little bit easier for others to find it. Oh, and if for some reason you want to see me compare this drum to maybe other drums that were part of the Snare Saturday series, feel free to leave that in the comments section as well, because I would love to get new ideas for some of these videos. And that is it. Thank you so much for checking out this video on an early 60s Ludwig Auditorium snare drum. And until next time, see you later.